I should have seen it coming when Jessica started talking about closure, like it was some kind of holy grail she desperately needed to find. But love makes you stupid, and I was the kind of stupid that believed promises were actually meant to be kept. David, you're being paranoid, she'd say whenever I brought up her late-night texting sessions with Brandon, her ex-boyfriend from college. We're just friends now. People can be friends with their exes, you know. The thing is, I did know. I had friends who were exes too. But none of them made my fiancé smile the way Brandon's messages did. None of them made her phone light up at midnight with notifications she'd quickly swipe away when I walked into the room. I'm a software engineer at a tech startup downtown, which means I spend my days solving problems with logical solutions. When something doesn't add up, I notice. When patterns emerge that shouldn't exist, red flags start waving in my head like a NASCAR caution period. The pattern with Jessica and Brandon had been building for months. It started innocent enough, a casual mention here and there about running into him at the coffee shop near her marketing firm. Then it became regular updates about his life, his new job, his struggles with dating after their breakup 3 years ago. He's having such a hard time moving on, she'd tell me over dinner, genuine concern in her voice. I feel bad for him. He says I was the love of his life, and he's never found anyone who compares. Red flag number 1. Why was she telling me this? What reaction was she expecting? That sounds like his problem to figure out, I'd respond, trying to keep my tone neutral. Not really something you need to fix for him. She'd get that look then, the one that said I was being unreasonable, unsympathetic, maybe even a little cruel. I'm not trying to fix anything, I'm just being a friend. Is that not allowed? Red flag number 2. Turning my reasonable concern into an attack on her character. But I loved her. We'd been together for 2 years, engaged for 6 months. The wedding was planned, the venue booked, the invitations sent. Our families had already traveled from across the country. Her parents had spent a fortune on the reception at their country club. My mom had bought a dress she'd been saving for since I was in high school. So I did what men in love do when they know something's wrong but can't prove it. I convinced myself I was overreacting. Until the night everything changed. It was a Tuesday, exactly 1 week before our wedding. Jessica said she needed to run some last-minute errands, something about picking up her altered dress and grabbing a few things for the honeymoon. She kissed me goodbye at 7 p.m. and said she'd be back by 9. She walked through our apartment door at 11:30 with that same strange calm she always had after seeing Brandon. I recognized it now, the way her shoulders relaxed, the satisfied smile she tried to hide, the way she moved like someone who'd just gotten exactly what she wanted. How was the dress fitting? I asked from the couch, where I'd been pretending to watch Netflix while actually watching the clock. Perfect, she said, hanging her purse on the kitchen counter. Everything's ready for Saturday. She didn't have any bags with her. No dress, no honeymoon supplies, nothing that would indicate she'd actually been shopping. Red flag number 3. Lying about something so easily verifiable. I wanted to call her out right then. I wanted to ask why she'd been gone for 4.5 hours to pick up items that apparently didn't exist. But something held me back. Maybe fear, maybe the last desperate hope that I was wrong about everything. I'm exhausted, she said, already heading toward the bedroom. I'm going to shower and go to sleep. I stayed on the couch until I heard the water running, then I did something I'd never done before. I looked at her phone. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, face down, still buzzing with notifications. My hands shook as I picked it up. I knew her passcode. She'd given it to me months ago when we'd moved in together, back when we still believed in complete transparency. The messages were all from Brandon. Tonight was incredible. I can't believe we're really doing this. I know you said this was the last time, but I don't want it to be. Are you sure you want to marry him? What we have is real, Jess. It always has been. And then her response, sent just 20 minutes earlier. It has to be the last time. I'm getting married on Saturday. But I needed this. One final goodbye to put a bold period at the end of our story. My legs gave out. I sank onto one of the kitchen stools, staring at the screen, reading the messages over and over again until the words blurred together. She had slept with him, tonight, 1 week before our wedding. While I was sitting at home, trusting her, believing her lies about dress fittings and errands, the shower was still running. I could hear her humming, actually humming, like she was happy, content, at peace with what she'd done. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every heart emoji, every casual reference to their ongoing affair that had apparently been happening right under my nose for months. Then I put her phone back exactly where she'd left it and walked to my home office. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my desk chair, staring at those screenshots, feeling like the biggest fool who'd ever lived. How many times had she lied to my face? How many errands and girls' nights and work events had actually been hookups with Brandon? By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding in some dramatic confrontation. I wasn't going to give her the chance to manipulate me with tears and apologies and promises to change. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative or paint herself as the victim of my unreasonable jealousy. No, I was going to let her walk down that aisle in her white dress, in front of everyone we knew, believing she'd gotten away with it. And then I was going to tell the truth. The next morning, Jessica woke up refreshed and glowing, like someone who'd had the best night's sleep of her life. She made coffee and hummed while she scrambled eggs, completely oblivious to the fact that I now knew exactly what had put her in such a good mood. "You seem happy," I said, testing the waters. "I am happy," she replied, leaning over to kiss my forehead. "Everything's falling into place for Saturday. I feel like I can finally relax and enjoy our wedding day." The audacity was breathtaking. She'd cheated on me less than 12 hours ago, and now she was talking about enjoying our wedding day. Part of me wanted to explode right then and there, to throw the evidence in her face and watch her scramble for explanations. But I held back. I had a better plan. "That's great, honey," I said, forcing a smile. "I want you to feel completely at peace with everything." Over the next few days, I watched her like a scientist studying a fascinating specimen. She was lighter, more affectionate, more present than she'd been in months. The guilt and tension that had been eating at her was gone, replaced by this serene confidence that made my skin crawl. She'd gotten her closure. She'd had her final goodbye. Now she could marry me with a clear conscience, knowing she'd properly ended things with the love of her life. Meanwhile, I was quietly preparing for the performance of my lifetime. I reached out to the wedding photographer and videographer, explaining that I wanted to make a special speech during the ceremony and needed to make sure they captured every moment. They were thrilled. Apparently, groom speeches during the actual ceremony were becoming trendy. I contacted the sound technician at the country club and arranged to have a wireless microphone available during the ceremony. I told him I wanted to surprise Jessica with some personal words before we exchanged vows. He thought it was romantic. I even called Jessica's maid of honor, Sarah, and told her I was planning something special and needed her to make sure Jessica's phone was easily accessible during the reception. Sarah was Jessica's best friend from college and had always been suspicious of me, but even she got caught up in what she thought was going to be a romantic gesture. "Oh my God, David, that's so sweet," she gushed over the phone. "Jessica is going to cry happy tears. She's been so stressed about everything being perfect. If she only knew how perfect it was going to be." The hardest part was acting normal around Jessica's family. Her parents, Linda and Robert, had flown in from Phoenix and were staying at the country club hotel. They'd always liked me, but there was an underlying sense that their daughter was settling by marrying a middle-class software engineer instead of someone from their social circle. "David, we're so proud to have you joining our family," Linda said during the rehearsal dinner on Friday night. "Jessica seems so happy and settled. You've been good for her." I smiled and thanked her, all while knowing that in less than 24 hours, their perfect daughter's reputation would be in ruins. Brandon wasn't invited to the wedding, obviously, but I knew he'd be watching from the sidelines. Jessica had been texting him constantly all week, probably giving him play-by-play updates about the preparations. From the screenshots I'd seen, he was encouraging her to go through with the marriage while keeping their relationship alive on the side. "You can have both," one of his messages read. "Marry him for stability, keep me for passion. Lots of people do it." The man was a real piece of work. He owned a small marketing consultancy and drove a BMW he couldn't afford, the kind of guy who thought he was God's gift to women because he could quote poetry and knew which wine to order at expensive restaurants. Jessica had always described him as sophisticated and worldly, which I now understood was code for manipulative and morally bankrupt. Friday night, as Jessica and I lay in bed for the last time as an unmarried couple, she curled up against me with a contented sigh. "I love you, David," she whispered into my chest. "Tomorrow is going to be the best day of our lives." I stroked her hair and stared at the ceiling. "It's definitely going to be unforgettable," I replied. She fell asleep quickly, but I stayed awake for hours, going over my plan one more time. I'd memorized every word I was going to say. I'd practiced the timing, the tone, the pauses for maximum impact. I'd thought through every possible reaction and prepared for every contingency. Jessica thought she'd played the perfect game. She thought she'd managed to have her cake and eat it too. One last passionate night with her true love, followed by a stable marriage to the safe choice who'd never suspect a thing. She had no idea that tomorrow, in front of 200 guests, I was going to show everyone exactly what kind of woman they'd come to celebrate. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, gentle breeze, the kind of day that makes people believe in fairy tale endings. Jessica woke up early and immediately started the elaborate process of getting ready, surrounded by her bridesmaids and her mother, all of them fluttering around like excited butterflies. I got dressed at my best friend Mike's house, where I'd stayed Friday night according to tradition. Mike had been my roommate in college and was serving as my best man. He was also the only person who knew something was seriously wrong. "You sure you want to go through with this?" he asked as he helped me with my bow tie. "If you're having doubts, it's better to call it off now than to make a scene at the altar." "I'm not having doubts," I said, looking at myself in the mirror. "I'm completely certain about what I'm going to do." Mike frowned. "That doesn't sound reassuring, man. You've been acting weird all week. What's going on?" I'd debated whether to tell him the truth, but decided against it. Mike was a good guy, but he was also a terrible liar. If he knew what I was planning, it would show on his face, and Jessica might pick up on it. "Just pre-wedding jitters," I said. "Everything's fine." The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. at the country club's outdoor pavilion. Jessica had insisted on the late afternoon timing because the lighting would be perfect for photos. She'd planned every detail meticulously: the flowers, the music, the positioning of the wedding party, even the angle of the arch where we'd exchange vows. Everything had to be perfect for her special day. I arrived at the venue at 3:30 and immediately checked with the sound technician. The wireless microphone was ready and tested. The photographer and videographer were in position. The guests were seated and chatting excitedly, everyone dressed in their finest clothes, ready to witness what they thought would be a beautiful celebration of love. Jessica's family occupied the first 3 rows on the left side. Her parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, all of them successful, well-dressed people who'd known each other for decades. They were the kind of family that appeared in country club newsletters and charity event photos, the kind of people who cared deeply about appearances and social standing. My family was smaller, but no less eager. My parents had driven up from North Carolina, my sister had flown in from Seattle, and various cousins and family friends filled out our section. They were good, honest, working-class people who'd saved up to buy nice outfits for the occasion and who genuinely believed they were witnessing the start of something beautiful. At exactly 4 p.m., the music started. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle in their pale pink dresses, smiling and nodding at the guests. Sarah, the maid of honor, gave me a thumbs up as she passed, still thinking she was part of some romantic surprise I had planned. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The music swelled, and Jessica appeared at the back of the aisle on her father's arm. She looked stunning, I had to admit. Her dress was elegant and perfectly fitted. Her makeup was flawless. Her smile was radiant. She walked slowly, savoring every step, making eye contact with friends and family members as she passed. This was her moment, her day to be the center of attention and admiration. When she reached the altar, her father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in mine. She squeezed my fingers and beamed up at me, her eyes sparkling with happiness and satisfaction. "You look beautiful," I whispered, and meant it. She did look beautiful. She also looked like someone who thought she'd gotten away with the perfect crime. The officiant, Pastor Williams from Jessica's family church, welcomed everyone and began the ceremony with a few words about love, commitment, and the sacred bond of marriage. I stood there holding Jessica's hands, nodding at the appropriate moments, playing the part of the nervous but excited groom. "Marriage is built on trust," Pastor Williams said, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "It requires honesty, faithfulness, and the courage to choose your partner every single day, even when that choice is difficult." Jessica nodded earnestly, as if those words held deep meaning for her, as if she hadn't violated every principle he was describing just 6 days ago. "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed," Pastor Williams continued, "speak now or forever. Hold your peace." This was the traditional moment for dramatic objections in movies and TV shows, but in real life, it usually passed in silence. Everyone looked around politely, waiting for the ceremony to continue. Instead, I stepped forward and gently took the microphone from Pastor Williams. "Actually," I said, my voice calm and clear, "I have something I need to say." A murmur went through the crowd. Jessica looked confused, but not alarmed. She probably thought this was the romantic surprise Sarah had hinted about. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," I began, looking out at the sea of faces. "Jessica and I have been planning this day for months, and it means the world to us to have all of you here to witness our commitment to each other." Jessica smiled and squeezed my hand encouragingly. Her parents looked pleased. The guests settled back in their chairs, ready to hear what they assumed would be heartfelt words of love and devotion. "Jessica," I said, turning to face her directly, "you told me this week that you needed closure with Brandon before you could fully commit to our marriage. You said you needed to put a bold period at the end of that story." Her smile faltered slightly. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. "Well, I want everyone here to know that you got that closure. On Tuesday night, exactly 1 week ago, you slept with Brandon one last time. You told him it was your final goodbye, your way of ending things properly before marrying me. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Jessica's face went white. The crowd was completely silent, everyone trying to process what they just heard. David, what are you... Jessica started to say, but I continued talking. You came home that night at 11:30 and told me you'd been running errands. You hummed in the shower like someone who was completely satisfied with how the evening had gone, and then you slept peacefully next to me, knowing you'd betrayed everything we'd built together. Jessica was shaking now, her hands trembling in mine. Stop, she whispered. Please stop. But I wasn't finished. You thought you could have both, I said, my voice getting stronger. A passionate goodbye with the love of your life, and a stable marriage with the safe choice who'd never find out. You thought you were smart enough to manage both relationships without consequences. The crowd was starting to react now. Gasps, whispers, the sound of people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Jessica's mother stood up, her face a mask of horror and disbelief. David, stop this right now, Linda commanded, but I ignored her. That period you put at the end of your story with Brandon, I said, looking directly into Jessica's tear-filled eyes. It wasn't the end of your past. It was the end of us. I let go of her hands and stepped back. Jessica reached for me, crying now, trying to explain. But there was nothing left to explain. Everything that needed to be said had been said. The crowd erupted. Jessica's family was on their feet, some of them shouting, others standing in stunned silence. My own family looked shocked, but not entirely surprised. They'd sensed something was off all week. I walked down the aisle and kept walking, leaving Jessica at the altar in her white dress, surrounded by the ruins of her carefully planned deception. Behind me, I could hear chaos erupting. Voices raised in anger and confusion, Jessica sobbing, her father demanding explanations. But I didn't look back. I drove straight to Mike's house, where I'd left my packed bags that morning. He found me there an hour later, sitting on his couch in my wedding tuxedo, drinking a beer and staring at the wall. Holy shit, David, he said, closing the door behind him. What the hell just happened? People are saying you accused Jessica of cheating at the altar. Please tell me that's not true. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots I'd been carrying around all week. Mike's expression went from confusion to anger to disgust as he read through Jessica's messages with Brandon. Jesus Christ, he muttered. She actually wrote one final goodbye? Who talks like that? Someone who thinks they're the protagonist in their own romantic drama, I said. Someone who believes they deserve to have everything they want without consequences. Mike sat down heavily in his recliner. So you just told everyone? In front of her whole family. I told the truth, in front of everyone who came to celebrate what they thought was a commitment based on love and honesty. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I'd left the venue. Calls and texts from family members, friends, even some of Jessica's relatives. I'd turned off the sound, but could see the notifications piling up. Your mom called me, Mike said. She wants to know if you're okay and where you are. What should I tell her? Tell her I'm fine, and I'll call her later. I just need some time to process everything. The truth was, I felt oddly calm. For the first time in weeks, the knot of anxiety and suspicion in my chest was gone. I'd been carrying the weight of Jessica's deception without even realizing it, and now that it was out in the open, I felt lighter than I had in months. Around 7 p.m., there was a knock at Mike's door. We looked out the window and saw Sarah, Jessica's maid of honor, standing on the porch. She looked like she'd been crying. I should probably talk to her, I said. Mike opened the door, and Sarah immediately launched into me. How could you do that to her? She demanded. In front of everyone she knows? In front of her grandparents? Do you have any idea what you've done? I told the truth about what she did, I replied calmly. If she's embarrassed by it, maybe she shouldn't have done it. She made a mistake. One stupid mistake, and you destroyed her entire life over it. One mistake? I pulled out my phone and showed her the message thread. This wasn't a mistake, Sarah. This was a calculated decision to cheat on me a week before our wedding and then lie to my face about it. Sarah read the messages, her anger gradually shifting to uncomfortable recognition. She'd known Jessica longer than anyone. She knew exactly what kind of person her best friend really was. She loves you, Sarah said weakly. She was just confused about Brandon. She needed closure. She got closure, and now I have mine too. Sarah left without another word. Through Mike's window, I watched her sit in her car for several minutes, probably calling Jessica to report back on our conversation. Over the next few hours, the full scope of the fallout became clear. The country club reception had been canceled, obviously, but not before several dramatic confrontations had taken place. According to my cousin Emma, who'd stayed to help clean up, Jessica's family had turned on each other almost immediately. Her father was furious that Jessica had embarrassed the family in front of their entire social circle. Her mother was in denial, insisting there had to be some misunderstanding. Her grandmother had apparently said, "I knew that girl was too pretty for her own good," which had caused a screaming match between Linda and her mother-in-law. Meanwhile, my family had rallied around me. They'd suspected something was wrong and were relieved to finally understand what had been bothering me. My sister Kate called around 9 p.m. to check on me. "I never liked her," Kate said bluntly. "She always seemed fake to me. Too perfect, you know? Like she was performing the role of the ideal girlfriend instead of actually being one." "You never told me that. You were happy. Or I thought you were happy." I didn't want to interfere. She paused. "Are you okay? Really okay?" I considered the question. Was I okay? I'd just blown up my entire life. My relationship was over, my wedding was canceled, my reputation was probably in tatters, but somehow I felt more like myself than I had in months. "Yeah," I said. "I think I really am." By Monday morning, the story had spread through our entire social circle like wildfire. In the age of social media, dramatic wedding disasters don't stay private for long. Someone had filmed my speech on their phone, and by Sunday night, it was making the rounds on Instagram and TikTok. I'd taken Monday off work, anticipating that I'd need time to deal with the aftermath. I was right. My phone rang constantly with calls from friends, family members, and even some of Jessica's relatives who wanted to hear my side of the story. The most interesting call came from Jessica's Aunt Patricia, her mother's sister, who'd never particularly liked Jessica. "I just wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're the villain here," Patricia said. "Jessica has always been spoiled and selfish. Linda and Robert never held her accountable for anything, and this is the result." "I appreciate that," I said, "but I'm not looking for people to take sides. I just wanted the truth to come out." "Well, it certainly did that. The whole family is in chaos. Linda is talking about suing you for emotional distress, which is ridiculous. Robert is threatening to cut Jessica off financially, and Jessica herself has locked herself in her childhood bedroom and won't come out." Part of me felt bad about that. Despite everything she'd done, I didn't take pleasure in Jessica's suffering. I'd loved her for 2 years. I'd planned to spend my life with her. Seeing her humiliated and broken wasn't satisfying. It was just necessary. Tuesday brought an unexpected visitor. I was working from home when the doorbell rang, and I opened the door to find Brandon standing on my porch. He looked nervous, but was trying to project confidence, like a man who'd convinced himself he held the moral high ground. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't," I replied, starting to close the door. "Wait." He put his hand on the door frame. "Look, I know you're angry, but you don't understand the whole situation. Jessica and I have history. Real history. What you two have is... It's nice, it's stable, but it's not love. Not the way she loves me." I stared at him for a moment, amazed by his audacity. "You're right," I said. "I don't understand how someone can be so delusional that they think they're the hero in this story." "I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just trying to be honest about what Jessica really wants. She was going to marry you out of obligation, but her heart was always with me. I did you a favor by showing her that." "You did me a favor by sleeping with my fiancé a week before my wedding." Brandon shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that. We were just talking, trying to get closure, and things got emotional. But it made us both realize that what we have is real. It's worth fighting for." "Then why didn't she call off the wedding herself? Why was she planning to go through with marrying me while keeping you on the side?" He didn't have an answer for that. Or rather, he had an answer, but was smart enough to know it would make him look even worse. "She was confused," he said finally. "She didn't want to hurt you. So instead, she was going to lie to me for the rest of our marriage while continuing to sleep with you. That was her way of not hurting me?" Brandon's confident facade was cracking. "Look, man, I'm sorry it went down this way, but you have to see that this is better for everyone. You deserve someone who actually wants to be with you, not someone who's settling for security." "You're absolutely right," I said. "And now I'm free to find that person, thanks to you showing me exactly who Jessica really is. So thank you." I closed the door in his face and watched through the window as he stood there for a moment, clearly not having expected the conversation to go that way. He'd probably thought he could convince me to step aside gracefully, maybe even thank him for freeing Jessica to follow her heart. Instead, he'd just confirmed everything I already knew about both of them. Wednesday brought news that Jessica had finally emerged from her room and was trying to do damage control. According to Sarah, who called to update me on the situation, Jessica was telling anyone who would listen that she'd made a terrible mistake and wanted to work things out. "She's saying you two can go to counseling," Sarah told me. "She thinks if you just talk through everything, you can rebuild the trust." "There's nothing to rebuild," I said. "Trust isn't something you can fix once it's completely destroyed. It's like trying to unbreak a mirror. Even if you glue the pieces back together, you'll always see the cracks." "She really does love you, David. She's always had this thing about Brandon. He's like her weakness. But she chose you. She was going to marry you." "She was going to marry me while planning to keep sleeping with him. That's not choosing me, Sarah. That's using me." Sarah was quiet for a moment. What if she cuts him off completely? What if she proves that she's serious about making this work? It's too late for that. Even if I could somehow forgive what she did, how would I ever trust her again? Every time she was late coming home, every time her phone buzzed, every time she said she was going out with friends, I'd wonder if she was lying. That's not a marriage. It's a prison sentence. By Thursday, the story had reached our workplace. I'd been dreading going back to the office, but my coworkers were surprisingly supportive. Most of them had met Jessica at company events and had liked her, but they were more concerned about me than judgmental about the situation. "That took guts," said Tom, one of my fellow engineers. "I don't know if I would have had the balls to do what you did." "It wasn't about guts," I replied. "It was about self-respect. I couldn't spend the rest of my life pretending I didn't know what kind of person I'd married." My boss, Jennifer, called me into her office to check on my mental state and make sure the personal drama wouldn't affect my work performance. She was a straightforward woman in her 50s who'd been through her own divorce several years earlier. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better than I expected, honestly. It's weird. I thought I'd be devastated, but mostly I just feel relieved." Jennifer nodded knowingly. "That's usually a sign that you made the right decision. When ending a relationship feels more like freedom than loss, it means the relationship was already over, you just hadn't admitted it yet." She was right. Looking back, I could see that Jessica and I had been drifting apart for months. The constant tension about Brandon, the arguments about boundaries, the way she'd become distant and secretive, our relationship had been dying a slow death. Her betrayal had just put it out of its misery. Friday brought the final confrontation I'd been expecting. Jessica showed up at my apartment building, somehow having convinced the doorman to let her up. When I opened my door, she looked terrible. No makeup, hair unwashed, wearing sweatpants and an old college t-shirt. This wasn't the polished, put-together woman I'd been engaged to. This was someone who'd hit rock bottom. "Please," she said before I could speak. "Just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the edge of my couch like she was afraid to get comfortable, her hands twisted in her lap. "I know what I did was unforgivable," she began. "I know I have no right to ask for another chance. But I need you to understand that it didn't mean anything. It was like scratching an itch, getting something out of my system so I could be fully present in our marriage." "By cheating on me?" "By getting closure with Brandon so I could move forward with you. I thought if I slept with him one last time, I could finally let go of all those old feelings and be the wife you deserved." The logic was so twisted, so self-serving, that I almost laughed. "So you betrayed our relationship in order to save our relationship. I know how it sounds. I know it was wrong. But in my mind, I was doing it for us. I was trying to clear the slate so we could start fresh. Jessica, listen to yourself. You're trying to convince me that cheating was an act of love, that lying to my face was for my own good. Do you hear how insane that sounds?" She started crying then, the kind of desperate tears that come when someone realizes their carefully constructed justifications aren't working. "I was scared," she sobbed. "I was scared that if I didn't get closure with Brandon, I'd always wonder what if. I thought one night with him would prove to me that what we had was just nostalgia, just old feelings that weren't real anymore. And I was right. It did prove that. Being with him made me realize that you're the one I really want to be with." "If that's true, then why were you planning to keep seeing him after our wedding?" She looked up sharply. "What? I never said that." I showed her the message thread on my phone, pointing to Brandon's texts about continuing their relationship and her responses that didn't shut down the idea. "I wasn't planning to keep seeing him," she insisted. I didn't want to hurt his feelings by being too harsh." "You were more concerned about hurting his feelings than about betraying me?" She had no answer for that because there was no good answer. Every explanation she offered just made her look worse. "I love you," she said finally. "I know I screwed up, but I love you. Doesn't that count for something?" I looked at her sitting there in my living room, this woman I'd planned to spend my life with, and felt nothing but sadness. Not anger anymore, not betrayal, just a deep sadness for what we'd lost and what we'd never really had. Jessica, if you loved me the way you claim to, you never would have done this. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't hedge its bets by keeping backup options available. So that's it? She asked. 2 years together, and you're just going to throw it all away over one mistake? You threw it away when you decided that sleeping with your ex was more important than honoring our commitment. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. She left after that, and I knew it was the last time I'd see her. The woman I'd fallen in love with, or thought I'd fallen in love with, had never really existed. She'd been a performance, a carefully crafted image designed to secure the stable, comfortable life Jessica wanted while keeping her options open for the passionate, dramatic love she thought she deserved. The following Monday brought a call that changed everything I thought I knew about the situation. It was from Marcus, a mutual friend who worked at the same marketing firm as Jessica. His voice was tense, like someone who'd been wrestling with a difficult decision. "David, we need to talk," he said. "There's something you need to know about Jessica and Brandon. Something that makes what happened even worse than you realize." We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from both of our workplaces. Marcus looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his coffee cup and avoiding eye contact. "I should have told you this months ago," he began. "But Jessica swore me to secrecy, and I thought maybe it would just blow over and you'd never need to know." "Know what?" "The thing with Brandon, it wasn't just that one night before your wedding. They've been sleeping together for months. Since last Christmas, at least. Maybe longer." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd thought I understood the scope of Jessica's betrayal, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a final goodbye. This was a sustained affair that had been going on for nearly half our engagement. "How do you know this?" I asked. "Because I saw them together, multiple times, at hotels, leaving restaurants, in his car outside the office, and Jessica, she wasn't even trying to hide it from me. She said you were too trusting to ever suspect anything, and that I'd better keep my mouth shut if I wanted to keep working with her." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me photos he'd taken. Jessica and Brandon holding hands outside a hotel, kissing in a restaurant booth, getting into his BMW together. The timestamps showed dates going back 8 months. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, though I wasn't really angry with him. I was just trying to process the magnitude of what I was learning. "Because Jessica is vindictive as hell, and she has connections at our company. She threatened to get me fired if I said anything. And honestly, I thought you might already know, and just be choosing to ignore it." I scrolled through the photos, feeling sick. There were dozens of them, spanning months. This wasn't an affair. This was a parallel relationship. Jessica had been living a double life, playing the devoted fiancé with me while maintaining what was essentially a second boyfriend. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. "The night she slept with Brandon before your wedding? That wasn't planned as a final goodbye. They were supposed to meet up during your honeymoon, too? Jessica had told him you'd be too drunk and tired from the wedding to pay attention to what she was doing." The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too crowded. I needed air, space to think. Marcus followed me outside, still talking. "She had it all planned out. The stable marriage with you, the exciting affair with Brandon. She thought she could manage both indefinitely. The only reason she told Brandon it was one last time was because she was getting paranoid that people were starting to notice. People like you. People like me. People at the office. People in your social circle. She was getting sloppy, taking bigger risks. I think part of her wanted to get caught." We stood on the sidewalk in silence for a moment, watching traffic pass by. I felt like I was relearning everything I thought I knew about my relationship with Jessica. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because she's been spreading rumors about you at work, saying you were emotionally abusive, that you isolated her from her friends, that you were controlling and paranoid. She's painting herself as the victim who finally escaped a toxic relationship." That explained some of the strange looks I'd been getting from people in Jessica's extended social circle. I'd assumed they were just uncomfortable about the wedding drama, but apparently Jessica had been actively working to destroy my reputation. "She's also telling people that the messages you showed at the wedding were fake, that you manipulated the screenshots to make her look bad because you wanted out of the marriage but didn't want to pay for the wedding cancellation." The audacity was breathtaking, but it was also classic Jessica. When caught in a lie, don't admit guilt. Create a bigger lie that makes you the victim. "I can prove she's lying," Marcus said. "I've got photos, timestamps, witnesses. If she keeps pushing this narrative, I'll go public with everything I know." I thanked Marcus and drove home, my mind reeling. The woman I'd thought I knew, the woman I'd planned to marry, had been living a completely fabricated life. Every conversation we'd had about trust, every promise she'd made about Brandon, every moment of intimacy we'd shared, all of it had been happening while she was actively betraying me with another man. That evening, I called my sister Kate and told her what I'd learned. "Jesus, David," she said, "how are you not completely losing your mind right now?" "I think I'm past the point of shock," I replied. "At this point, I'm just grateful I found out before we actually got married. Can you imagine if I'd discovered this a year from now, after we'd bought a house together or had kids? You're handling this way better than I would. I'd probably be planning some kind of revenge." The word revenge stuck with me after we hung up. What Jessica had done was beyond normal relationship betrayal. She'd systematically deceived me for months while planning to continue the deception indefinitely. She'd risked my health by sleeping with another man without protection. She'd stolen nearly a year of my life by letting me plan a future based on lies. And now she was trying to destroy my reputation to cover her tracks. Maybe it was time to stop being the nice guy who walked away quietly. Maybe it was time to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person Jessica really was. I spent the next few days gathering evidence. Marcus shared his photos and agreed to serve as a witness if needed. I compiled all the text messages, not just the ones from the week before our wedding, but months of communications between Jessica and Brandon that I'd found on her cloud backup. I also reached out to other people in our social circle, asking casual questions about what Jessica had been telling them about our relationship. The picture that emerged was damning. She'd been laying the groundwork for months, telling people I was jealous and controlling, that she felt trapped in our relationship but was afraid to leave. By Friday, I was ready to act. I created a detailed timeline of Jessica's affair, complete with photos, messages, and witness statements. Then I sent it to everyone in our combined social circle: friends, family members, co-workers, everyone who'd received a wedding invitation. The email was clinical and factual. No emotional appeals or angry accusations. Just the truth, laid out chronologically with supporting evidence. "I'm sharing this information," I wrote in the introduction, "because Jessica has been spreading false claims about our relationship and the reasons for our wedding cancellation. These are the facts, supported by evidence about what actually happened. I'm not asking anyone to choose sides or make judgments. I'm simply providing the truth so people can make their own informed decisions." The response was immediate and overwhelming. My phone started ringing within minutes of sending the email. Friends who'd been distant since the wedding were calling to apologize for believing Jessica's version of events. Family members were expressing shock and support. Even some of Jessica's own relatives reached out to say they'd suspected something was wrong, but hadn't known the extent of her deception. The most satisfying call came from Sarah, Jessica's maid of honor, who'd been one of Jessica's strongest defenders. "I owe you a huge apology," she said. "I had no idea it had been going on for so long. Jessica told me it was just that one night, that she'd made a terrible mistake, but still loved you. I feel like such an idiot for believing her." "You're not an idiot. You're a loyal friend who wanted to believe the best about someone you cared about. Jessica is very good at manipulating people's emotions. She's been calling me all day, crying and saying you're trying to ruin her life. But after seeing those photos and messages, God, David, she played all of us." By the end of the week, Jessica's carefully constructed narrative had completely collapsed. The people she'd been counting on for support had seen the evidence and realized they'd been lied to. Her reputation in our social circle was destroyed, her credibility was gone, and her attempts to paint herself as the victim had backfired spectacularly. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall, but I felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that the truth was finally out there. Jessica had gambled that she could control the narrative, that her charm and manipulation would let her escape the consequences of her actions. She'd been wrong,